So, John, how does the Celebration Bowl continue to stay nimble in the era of television market share and ever-changing landscape? Simply put, how do fans define what is the growth of the Celebration Bowl?
That's a very good question. I like to, I always begin with the end in mind when I'm looking at anything. And the ultimate goal for us was to build the Super Bowl, to build our Super Bowl.
Doc, you mentioned Lincoln and the streak they've been on. They're the winners of 8 consecutive games. So they have not lost in this calendar year. There's only one team that has a consecutive
was a streak and it was 8, but I didn't realize they hadn't lost this calendar year. That's a nice touch.
Yeah, but there's one team out there who has a streak slightly longer than theirs.
I know. Oh, longer?
Yes, right now on the D2 level. On the D2 level. HBCU D2. Let me specify. HBCU D2 women. There's one team that has a longer streak.
Oh, well, that's easy to. Yeah.
Tuskegee's only at 6 in a row. Tuskegee's only at 6 in a row. It's our forgotten HBCU on the D2 level. West Virginia State. They're the winners of 9 consecutive women.
Nice. Good.
Okay.
Yeah. I see you, Drew.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
keep that computer churning. I like what you're spitting.
Great observation there, Drew, about the records in Division II. I want to do a breakdown of looking at people's non-conference later, because that's fascinating when you juxtapose it against Division I, which we know that's a different story, but still, I think it is interesting to look at.
Brian, 11 of the 29 women HBCU programs on January 22nd have double-digit wins.
Nice.
That's over 1/3 have double-digit wins. No one is winless.
Nice.
And
I still say
when
20
you add in
wins
the 9-win
is a
teams,
mark. I think 20 wins is still an actionable mark that you look at and say,
oh yeah.
That's
I love that 20. I love that 20-win mark. It's still significant, particularly at the Division II level, NIA level. You get to 20. Sometimes at them, they get a chance to get to 25. Really looking good. Right. But at the Division I level, if you can get to 20 wins, you're really doing something. Sometimes that demarcation may need to be closer to 17, 18. But it's something beautiful about that round number when you can put that 20-win mark on it.
20,
So I
21.
love that you brought that up. Yeah, I love that you brought that up.
And take it one step further, everybody. 15 of the 29 are at 9 wins or better. So over half of our women's programs are at 9 wins or better with 5 weeks remaining in the basketball season.
They're being paid for the services. Yeah. Yeah, and I guarantee you, if you went to those players and say, hey fellas, if we play these 2 games, you will get cost of attendance. I guarantee you the decision will be unanimous. Coach, let's play them. Let's play them.
Right.
Because the athletes are actually benefiting from it. But it's a it's a 2-edged sword. Even though you're playing those games to help those kids with the cost of attendance, you still put them out there. And AD was right. You still doing it's just doing it another way. You're still doing the exact same thing.
Well, I did answer yes to it when he posed that question, but then I think I came with something out of the field remark behind it, because basically I said, hey, $1,000 versus 100, I'm gonna take the 1,000, but yes, I'm still taking one for the team. I believe it is that. But cost of attendance comparable to NIL. It can't. To me, NIL is quick and short term. Cost of attendance is something that could be long term. Wheeler, can you compare and contrast NIL versus cost of attendance, or is cost of attendance something that should be looked at more of doing it? Because Coach Banks, the director of Southern, he came on the show and talked about that's what Southern's trying to do for their student athletes.
I think cost of attendance has the ability to affect everyone, whereas NIL is going to affect only those
Some.
players that are popular, that are marketable themselves,
Mhm.
like starting
Correct.
quarterback, starting running back, your star receiver, or something like that. But
Yeah.
you know, cost of attendance has an opportunity to affect everyone, and so you
Mhm.
know that's why the cost of attendance to me outweighs anything that NIL can bring to the table. Plus the
Right.
fact that NIL is not, how can I put it, the longevity factor in terms of
Mhm.
NIL is not there, as opposed to the longevity factor in terms of the potential of cost of attendance. So, you know, you're able, in my opinion, you're able to cover more ground if you're able to do cost of attendance than you are NIL, which only concerns itself with a certain number, a limited number of players, that sort of thing.
Yeah, because that's interesting, because you mentioned quarterbacks and they're getting those deals, their name recognition, but without those big guys up front.
Yeah, I mean
I
that.
mean, what about
That goes,
O linemen, D linemen?
and these guys are
Uh,
only human. These guys are only human. And at what
mhm.
point in time does that doubt or whatever, jealousy or whatever it is you want to
Yep.
call it, kind of creep in? You know, here my jersey's getting dirty, and you know I'm keeping folk up off this guy, and he ain't even buy me a burger last week. You know, so you know maybe I need to slip and fall on one to kind of who's in charge, who's actually in charge up here, and you know maybe he'll start to share the wealth, or what is there in the Godfather, wet my beak. You know, maybe he'll a little bit. You know, so it's something that kids, you know, kids nowadays they think about those things. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
so I mean it's something to be thought about. That's for sure.
Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won. I hope my team they won. Yeah, man. I hope my team they won. I hope my team they won. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with this hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. As you see, Mike Washington is on assignment. We have Associate Professor Tenure Track, A.D. Drew in the building, and we have none other than Charles Bishop. Look at Charles. Charles is trying to get that humble look, like nothing's going on, nothing's wrong. The last 5 days, man, have been a whirlwind, and I've been tagging along and pledging him, as some people would say. And I know other folks say they don't believe in hazing, so, you know, maybe I should be careful about how I use that language. But he was made right. In the academic sense, he was made right. We're going to put it that way. With that being said, he traveled with me, part of a doctoral student, as we got funds from Texas Southern University, a grant that I wrote for critical sports studies. Got a chance to go to CSRI, that is the College Sports Research Institute in Columbia, South Carolina, presented some research. Particularly, his research topic was on coach prime, the prime effect as we called it, way back in the day before you heard early other folks speaking about it. And it's on record, it's taped, so you can go back and check that out. Just for those that like to verify sources, since we're talking academically. And then on Monday, he got a chance to present part of TSU Research Week as a graduate student. He did his thing. That one he had to run solo, so he really got the big head and showed out. So it's my time to kind of deflate him. He was all that. Before I asked him his thoughts and then get into some news of the day, let me do this appropriate. Welcome to episode 377 inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast, the show that's covering the sporting HBCU for all things HBCU sports. For institutions large and small, from the NCAA to the NAIA, we share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics, to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. Simply, we like to call it HBCU sports pedagogy. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Washington. Charles Bishop, as I said, Mike Washington is out on assignment. So we have AD Drew in the building, and we're filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to our KCWH 1230 AM studios in Texas with the Radio Hall of Famer, multi-Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper in the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas, home of the Final Four HBCU All-Star game. Houston Rockets hosting LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers. Just so many opening MLB with the Astros, who are the World Series champions, if you would. So a lot going on this weekend. So you see why we're running ragged and tired. Let me get back to Charles before we get to this train too far off the rail. Shout out to everybody joining us. Appreciate the lab listeners. With that being said, Charles, what did you think about everything, man? Your new claim to fame. What did you think?
Oh, it's a tremendous experience being at CSRI. And especially, I know, Dr. Bill, you're real humble, but the listening audience needs to absolutely understand the giant that is Dr. Cavil within this sports studies, sports leadership world. Everybody knows him at this conference. So to be able to tag along with one of the giants within this field of study is tremendous. And to get an opportunity to present research, Dr. Cavil's research in regards to the prime effect, it was a tremendous experience. We got an opportunity, I think we mentioned last Thursday, to see a sneak preview of the movie Air, which detailed, the Nike's acquiring Michael Jordan essentially to be a spokesperson for Nike. Tremendous experience, but just to be in the company of all these sports management majors and doctoral students and people who are really heavy hitters within this studying the business of sports, a tremendous opportunity. I would cherish it, definitely.
Free the athletes. Hashtag free the athletes.
Free the athletes. Free the athletes.
Charles, tell you a little more about that. We brought him in the dark side, as we like to call it. Free the athletes.
That's it. Yes, indeed. Always free the athletes.
As he coined it. I like he all in now. 80 Drew, I see it looks like you're a little bit in the office class now, putting in some of that work. You moved over from the adjunct side, and now you see the life is not as gracious and beautiful as you thought. You got all kinds of hours grading multiple papers. Yeah, it's tough. I see you. How you doing today?
Now, the ironic thing is, Doc, since I got finished with my quote-unquote 9 to 5 portion of my job after 5 o'clock, I realized that I was not going to make it home in time to get to my home studio to do the show. So I decided to hang out here at the office. And what did I do while I was hanging out here in the office, Doc? You just said it, grading papers. So, it's just kind of ironic that you said that as a joke, but that's what I seriously was doing 30 minutes ago, my brother. And
hey, it wasn't a joke. I saw it in your eyes, man. I've been at this long enough. I can see it in your eyes. I see grading paper look in thy eye. I know what it looks like.
The 1,000-yard stare.
You see the frustration. You see the frustration of looking at college students who just don't read the simplest of instructions when doing the paper and lose the simplest points. Great content, but you didn't put a doggone title page on there. Great content,
But you didn't. You put your reference.
You didn't put your name on the
but you
paper.
didn't cite it at the end of the paper. So
Right.
anyway, and
Like you said, the
shout out
simplest
to
thing
you,
to throw you off.
for doing your presentations. You know, I used to love to present when I was in grad school as a master's student. So ultimately, I'm going to get back to that level as I pursue a terminal degree. Hopefully, sometime soon. I get back into that presentation mode. I love to present.
No doubt, no doubt. Silas Edward McMorris, Carol Keelam. Lennon Blow says, good evening, fellas. I'm here for class. How do you think my Norfolk State Spartans will do in football this season? I'll be interested. I think they're going to do a little bit of a bounce back. I know a lot of people are down on the Norfolk State Spartans. I like Odoms. I think Odoms is going to quietly push forward. So I look for them to see at a minimum a winning record. I think they're going to move forward. And as I said, shocks people. Good evening, everywhere. PV is in the lab. You'll hear more about that as you get into these spring practices and things of that nature. People are getting ready. As we said, Silas Edward McMorris says, good evening. Mary Allen is in here saying hello to everybody. HBCU land. Emma Price, Edwin D. Moore, Ricky Burton's in the building. G. Boom Holly is always sending us love. G. Boom Holly will be taking pictures at the All-Star HBCU game classic. And so that'll be interesting to see what he brings home, as he always does great work. Willie Alex Hine representing the CIAA in the house. Jerome G. Sutton, you know, he's representing the mighty band over there in FAMU land. Carol Keelam, Jazzy Faye, Charles Bishop, I see you making sure that he's online getting us ready. Brother Wendell Davis says greetings. So appreciate you all checking in with us. Let me do the honors with some news of the day. It happens to be a school that I am somewhat aware of. Prairie View A&M claims SWAC bowling tournament title. They get it done in fine fashion as they defeat Alabama State 4-1 in a best of 7, the Baker format at the 2023 SWAC bowling tournament in the bowling ITRC. Getting it done, most valuable bowler, Stephanie Vasquez gets it done. Vasquez concluded the event with highest pin average of 227 as she was key contributor for the PVAMU. Prairie View claimed game 1, 181 to 179. Close one there. Game 2 was 211 to 185, not as close. Before falling in game 3 of the match, 197 to 180, but the Panthers rebounded to claim game 4, 200 to 162 as they start to put it away in game 5. They get it done 179 to 161. Win clinches a berth in the upcoming 2023 NCAA Women's Bowling Tournament for the Lady Panthers, marking what will be PVAMU's third appearance in the event in the last 4 years as they have dominated conference play. Most valuable players, as I said, Stephanie Vasquez, Prairie View SWAC Bowling All-Tournament team consisted of Stephanie Vasquez of Prairie View, Juliana Riccone of Jackson State, Jordan Ship of Florida A&M, Kelsey Quinney of Southern, Jada Gordon of Prairie View A&M, Delisi Reyes of Prairie View A&M. Joining them in the tournament will be North Carolina A&T State, and they win the MEAC. Yes, I'll say that again, the MEAC. No, A&T has not returned to the MEAC. Their bowling stayed in the MEAC, and they dominated over the last couple of years as they won the championship. North Carolina A&T State came from behind to win this year, though, in 2023. Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference MEAC Bowling Championship on Sunday afternoon, defeating Monmouth University 4-3 at Penn Boys on the Bench. This marks the third straight title for the Aggies and their 8th overall. North Carolina A&T State earns the MEAC automatic bid to the 2023 NCAA Women's Bowling National Championship, and selection show will be aired live on NCAA.com on Wednesday, April 29th at 4 p.m. So check that out tomorrow, and that is 4 p.m. Eastern. So we'll keep you updated and let you know how those matchups are coming. In terms of the outstanding performer was Lauren Thomas Westgate, North Carolina A&T. Outstanding coach is Kim Terrell Kearney of North Carolina A&T. And also Melanie Caton of North Carolina A&T were part of the all-tournament team along with outstanding performer Lauren. With that being said, a lot of stuff going online, a lot of big news there. Charles?
Ask this quick question, and it made me curious, especially looking at PV and North Carolina A&T winning bowling championship. But just curiosity with regards to the popularity of bowling with this generation, especially when you talk about the explosion of esports and things of that nature, has bowling in any way lost the stature that it once had, maybe from a generation prior?
I don't think so. I think it's still kind of big, particularly on the women's side. I think you see it playing more. I think it's pretty popular. Obviously, Miaka's won national championships in terms of what they're doing in Maryland Eastern Shore. So I think it's pretty popular. I think it's going to continue. But to your point, I think sports is going to explode. It's continued to get bigger and bigger. I think what's going to be interesting to see the demarcation of how fast and how big esports gets is if you'll ever see NCAA put it in its umbrella. But you have some esports folks that have their own association that would love to keep it separate. So that's going to be intriguing just to kind of see what that looks like. A lot of schools have esports. Many of them are involved more on the student service side versus in the athletic office. So that's going to be intriguing to see how popularity it comes. We already know the magnitude from a global perspective, but in terms of a sporting perspective of getting that glaze, I think that's going to be the indicator to see what that looks like. Great question there in terms of that. Any news in terms of softball updates? Anything you want to get there? Or I can jump in here and share some of that.
Actually, a couple of basketball notes. Southern men's basketball looks like Tulane assistant Kevin Johnson is reportedly the choice to take over the program, and that's per Stadium's Jeff Goodman with regards to Kevin Johnson. But Kevin Johnson spent time, of course, at Louisiana Lafayette under head coach Bob Marlin, helping the program to 174 wins, including a 27-win season during the 2017-2018 season before moving to Tulane prior to the 2019 season. So we'll see what happens with Southern University and their basketball coaching search.
I like this. Good information. Edwin D. Moore chops in on your question. He says, yes, Charles, bowling is still popular among the youth. Both his kids like bowling enough until they can do it as a family, and then they want to bowl with their friends from time to time. So just like young folks, as they mature, they're going to kind of shed the parents a little bit. Yeah, we good. No, not so much. Until they need to get in your pockets. But with that being said, A.D. Drew, I know you're familiar with the time when your kids wanted to get in your pockets, probably still trying to get in there. With that being said,
still want to.
Exactly. It doesn't seem to ever stop. Any news that you want to get out there before we take our first break?
FAMU happened to finish third in the SWAC Bowl, and we struck, but we couldn't strike again as the eventual champion Prairie View beat us. Just had to throw that in there.
And tell Brian he don't have to worry about it. He don't have to put the shirt on there. We didn't bet on it.
He already bought it, Doc, so he can wear it again. And interesting thing about the BAC bowling, the top three finishers are all associate members: Monmouth, UAB, and of course the champion North Carolina A&T State. Just so I'll throw that out there. But you asked about softball. Well, Doc, look no further than the state of Florida for SWAC softball honors, as the SWAC has tabbed Florida A&M's Jenna Mobley and Bethune-Cookman's Haley Gonzalez for the SWAC weekly honors. Hitter of the week, Mobley led the Rattlers with 6 hits and 11 at-bats to go along with 4 RBIs this past weekend against Alabama State with a slugging percentage of .727. That's not an airplane call. It's her slugging percentage. And an on-base percentage of .583. Gonzalez, 2-0 in the circle, picking up a pair of wins against Jackson State. Sorry, Charles. She worked 16.2 innings on the week with an ERA of 3.36 with 21 Ks in the series against the Tigers. Gonzalez struck out 8 batters in each of the first 2 games of the series, including a complete game in the opener.
Man, she was throwing 21 strikeouts, boy. They couldn't put a pat on the ball for nothing. That being said, big time matchup this weekend as you have FAMU and Bethune-Cookman fighting off. So it'll be interesting to see what that looks like, and we'll certainly keep you up to date. big time baseball honors. We'll get in that a little next segment as we get into some baseball matchups and talk about what went on in the SWAC. A lot of good stuff going on. We can even get into some of the track, outdoor track and field weekly honors as you had the Prairie View relays this past weekend. We told you to keep your eyes on. With that, let's get into our first break. We'll be right back on the other side after this first break.
We are still on.
I'll tell you what, Doc, let's go right into the next segment. Yeah.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Kever's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KEAVERSVOICE.com. Kever's Voice, Kever's Voice, KeversVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
This is Brian Fulford. A.D. Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN Sports Wrap. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Wrap, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
T. Madden & Associates is a sophisticated and experienced law firm located in your neighborhood. We're turning injury to cash.
T. Madden & Associates obtained almost $2 million for my injury. They turned my injury to cash.
Now, we can't guarantee how much your injury is worth, but we've recovered millions for our clients.
Call T. Madden & Associates at 833-PAID-123. That's 833-PAID-123.
Nope. Nope.
Come on, him?
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
You're looking for the latest information on Southern University sports, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and HBCU athletics. There's only one place to go. Tune in to the Carlos Brown Show, exclusively on the Black College Sports Network.
Press the analytic data with your hip-hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they want to lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bill inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Let's get into some of these updates. Before we get into that, A.D. Drew, give us an update in terms of what the SWAC said for giving us some baseball weekly honors. Who was honored on the baseball side? We talked a little bit of softball. Let's get in hot and heavy on baseball.
Let's stay with the ping of the bat. Guess what, Doc? We still are in the state of Florida. SWAC has tabbed Florida A&M Gianmico Bastaro and Bethune-Cookman's Nolan Santos for SWAC Weekly Baseball honors for their outstanding play this week. Bastaro contributed 8 runs to go along with not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 home runs and 10 RBIs during Florida A&M series against Alabama A&M as the two ag schools battled each other this week. He had a batting average of .545 and an on-base percentage of .643 during the 3-game series. Santos earned his 3rd win of the season with a complete game effort against Mississippi Valley State. While on the mound, he only allowed 1 earned run on 4 hits and 11 strikeouts. So he got right in that get right game against Valley.
Yeah, Valley seems to be allowing folks to get right. They did have a close Bethune-Cookman. Bethune-Cookman had in 2 of those games, but they got it done as Bethune-Cookman is really looking good. When you talk about what's going on in the East Division, let's kind of focus a little bit on the East Division. We'll come back and see what you think about the West, see as it went down. In the Eastern Division, you have FAMU that's jumped out overall 6-0. They're 12-12. 3 straight wins as they sweep through their matchup this weekend, getting it done against Alabama A&M, which kind of surprised me a little bit in terms of how Alabama took 2 out of 3 last week to Jackson State. So that surprised me. But let me give you some updates on some of the scores so you know. First game jumped off, FAMU shut out. The Rattlers shut out the Bulldogs 16-0 in that matchup. And then they came back, defeated A&M 13-3. Now, these games were in Tallahassee. Tallahassee plays well there, but I had no indication that they would dominate and get the bats going like they did because they closed out the series, the sweep, 16-8 over the Bulldogs. And so the Bulldogs fall, obviously, in the standings to 2-4. They've lost 3 straight in terms of their series as they were rolling a little bit coming into it. So that's where you had in terms of that matchup. Let me give you a couple of other matchups on that Eastern Division side. We can then talk about those matchups and where we stand in week 2 as we're starting to see formation. It'll be intriguing to see what that looks like going forward. The other thing you got going on there, obviously, is Bethune-Cookman is at home against Valley. You saw what they were able to do in terms of get players of the week. When they kicked things off, Friday, Saturday, Sunday matchups, some of these teams played 2 double headers during the week because they were trying to get ahead of the rain that Charles told me about as we were flying back in that would happen. So when you look at what Bethune-Cookman was able to do at Valley, 13-3 in that first matchup. In the second game, much closer game, but Bethune-Cookman comes back from behind, gets it done 6-4 over Valley. And then they close out to get the sweep. Even though the game was high scoring, still just 4 runs, the difference there, 12-8 in terms of that matchup when you look at going there. Then you had the one that I was looking forward to that you talked about going into this week was Alabama State at Jackson State. This game has been pretty much a huge rival. The last divisional championships, tournament championships have come from the East between Jackson State and Alabama State to give you some indication there. Other than that COVID year when Southern came back behind and defeated Jackson State as Jackson State was going for that undefeated season. But with that being said, you had the first matchup where Alabama State goes on the road and gets the game 9-2 in terms of just getting it done. And then you had the real close one where Alabama State comes from behind and wins Jackson State 9-7 in terms of that. And then the final game of the series that gave the Hornets the sweep was 6-3 over Jackson State. So what are you looking like in the Eastern Division? And FAMU, as I said, jumps out there 6-0. Bethune-Cookman is 1 game behind at 5-1. Alabama State is in 3rd position, 4-2. Alabama A&M 2-4, and then Jackson State at 1-5, and Mississippi Valley State at the bottom at 0-6. Mississippi schools in the Eastern Division are struggling right now, and the Florida schools are riding high. We'll see what that means with the Alabama schools in the middle. Let me go to you first, Charles. What are your thoughts in terms of what took place this baseball weekend? You can look at a couple of games that stood out to you, or in terms of the conference standings.
Yeah, I think the shocker, of course, this weekend is Alabama State 3-game sweep against Jackson State in Jackson, where Alabama State's bats were tremendously hot. Jackson State's pitching went south, but you take a look at back-to-back weekends now. They dropped 2 or 3 to Alabama A&M last weekend, and then they drop a 3-game set to Alabama State. I think they're more than happy for the Alabama schools to not come to Jackson for a second or two. And the question that you look at, right now, with Florida A&M, Bethune-Cookman, and Alabama State up at the top of the standings, does it become a boat race now for teams like Jackson State and Alabama A&M? Because those teams are just not going to back up. So it is a 10-yard fight from here on out for the Jackson State's baseball program in terms of trying to make some headway within this SWAC East.
Charles, not so fast. I know these teams are perennial, so maybe you do have a point there. But Alabama State, I see them find a way getting the hunt. I know last year, Prairie kind of jumped out their first half of the season, and then Southern came back and pulled them in. So it'll be interesting to see will this stay? Obviously, remember, this is just the first half, week 2, the long baseball season. You got the return trips, if you would, whether that is now hosting when you're on the road or if you go on the road hosting. So fascinating when you say that you're kind of concerned. It looks like some of this is getting away. I'm like, not so fast. I certainly understand. Let me go to you, Drew, in regards to what are your thoughts in terms of going on in the East Division? You're on mute there.
My fault. It's kind of interesting. You got Alabama State sitting in 3rd place, and you got the 2 teams ahead of them going to be battling each other this week. So we're going to see 1 or 2 things happen this week. Either those teams are going to beat up on each other, somebody takes 2 out of 3, which is going to allow Alabama State to get back into the race. And if it's not FAMU, they can't jump FAMU, but they could possibly tie FAMU. And if that's Bethune, they could jump Bethune and go. Oh, by the way, Doc, Florida A&M, number 1 in the BCSN ranking. Bethune-Cookman, number 2 in the BCSN ranking. Alabama State, number 3 in the BCSN ranking. Also, taking a look
at something about that Eastern Division. Wow.
It says something about the Eastern Division. I know we haven't got there yet, but I'm just forward looking at the schedule for next weekend. It's almost rivalry weekend in the SWAC, as everybody would play their quote-unquote travel partner or their rival, except for some reason Grambling is playing UAPB, and Southern Alcorn is a rival, but it's not Grambling Southern. So everybody else is playing a rival. FAM plays Bethune, Prairie View, Texas Southern, Alabama State, Alabama A&M, Jackson State, and Valley. So it's almost rivalry weekend in the SWAC. So hopefully Jackson State.
Yeah, I would go ahead and call. I like it. Double rivalry weekend. As you said, Prairie View come over Texas Southern. I'll be fascinated to catch some of these games in between everything else is going on in Houston. I did not say that was a big
McDonald's All-American game, the HBCU All-Star game, the Final Four.
Yeah, Houston's a spot. Houston is a spot this weekend.
Period. But, as you bring up the rivalry weekend, I thought it was interesting because Grambling and Southern actually started things off in week 1, oddly enough. How that scheduling went off, to your point, in regards to what goes on there. So I'm fascinated about some of that in terms of how that's moving forward and what that looks like. Let's get back on the other side. We'll take our next break and we'll come back and we'll turn it to the Western Division and see what your thoughts in terms of the Western Division. So we'll stick with us. We'll be right back after the second break. Come back on the other side and talk about the SWAC Western Division.
In Texas, and I have a good red meat blend. Texas Cowboy Dust is designed for steak and other red meats. It's out to be my most popular spice blend, made with onions, peppers, ground mushrooms, pink salt, and other spices. Texas Cowboy Dust also goes great with chicken, pork, vegetables, and adds a restaurant quality sheen to gravies and sauces.
It's like a loop machine. All around town, people trying to get down.
Vanilla smoked sea salt seasoning is for seafood. The tarragon and fennel bring out the natural sweetness in seafood. I also use it in rice dishes, on yams, asparagus, blueberry pancakes, and believe it or not, chocolate chip cookies. Vanilla smoked sea salt adds a salty and savory component to sweet dishes that create a symphony for the tongue.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com.
That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
But inside the HBCU Sports Lab with AD Drew and Charles Bishop, we're getting into the Western Division of the conference and see what's going on here. You'll see a similar type of lineup early in the season, but it may surprise some who's on the top. Maybe not if you're looking at who they're playing. We'll see if the schedule is more about who they played versus how tough they will be. They were preseason number 1. We'll see if you recall who that is, but I'll let that hang out there for a minute, as we like to call it, a tease. But let's get into those Friday matchups from the Western Division. You only had 2 games played, even though you had 3 series that were planned to play this weekend. One of them could not get in on Friday, so let's start who could. You had Prairie View that actually dominated Arkansas Pine Bluff on that Friday with a 13-1 score, getting the victory there. And you had Southern coming from behind in extra innings, 11 in affair where you actually had Southern scoring 7 runs to tie the game to take it into extra innings. Tough matchup there as they get it done. As Texas Southern was able to get on the board, but Texas Southern ended up scoring 2 and holding on as Texas Southern loses. Southern getting it done 11-9 in their Friday matchup. On Saturday, you had a couple of double headers as folks were trying to either get behind the rain that was coming across in a lot of ways going east to west. So as you said, they couldn't get it in Grambling, so they played 2 on Saturday, free baseball for some. And Prairie View also played 2 games. So let me give you the outcome of what took place there. Prairie View continues to win, but this one was close in the early matchup as they hold on to win over the Golden Line 6-5. And then you had the first matchup with Grambling as they dominated Alcorn State. A couple of home runs, big bats came out. 20-3 was the score. Grambling is pushing through. Then you had that proverbial close one, but Alcorn State could not get over the hill, if you would, as Grambling wins it 7-6. Prairie View wins a much closer game as they get it done and ultimately sweep Pine Bluff 5-2, which means they're 6-0 on the season. Hey, who would have thought that? As Texas Southern bounces back 11-3 on Saturday, which means they have a rubber matchup in terms of Sunday. Let's see what gets it done for those that still had the Sunday matchups. Grambling gets the sweep, brings out the broom on the Braves, 14-6. Southern gets the rubber matchup as they get it done and come on the road and get a huge victory after falling 1-2 on the road to Grambling in week 1. They bounce back on the road as they are now 2-1 in terms of getting it done in that matchup. So Southern is one of those teams that I told you, Charles, that came from behind last week, and they have that early schedule, tough schedule, if you would, being on the road. But let me give you an update of what it looks like in terms of the Western Division. You have Alcorn State at 0-6 sitting at the bottom. 6th slot, if you would. Arkansas Pine Bluff down there as well in the 5th slot at 1-5. Southern right dead in the middle at 3-3, along with Texas Southern that is also 3-3 on the season in terms of conference race. Grambling is 5-1. Prairie View gets out there ahead of themselves in their skis at 6-0. I'm gonna go to you first, AD Drew, and then Charles. I want to say if you think the same thing in the West as you thought in the East. I don't think so, but we'll see. With that being said, AD Drew, what do you think about the Western Division, some of those games, and obviously the divisional race?
And Dr. Cavil, I hope you don't shut my mic off for this comment that I am going to make, because I am going to I'm going to talk about both of your institutions. Which one is more fool's gold? Prairie View, it's an old conference record. Those 6 wins, Alcorn, UAPB. Supposed to win those. Or Texas Southern with its 17 overall victories, and 10 of those have been against non-division Division I opponents. Which one is going to be more fool's gold? Well, Doc, we'll get to answer part of that this weekend as they face each other in 4-game series. So that's why I put that question out there, Doc.
I love the question because it's the same one I had. And so I'm going to go to Charles and put him on the spot. How would you answer that, Charles, before you give me your thoughts on these weekend games? How would you answer? Who's more fool's gold?
I think who's more fool's gold right now for me, it looks like Texas Southern being more fool's gold. And I say that from this respect. Saturday's game, they had Southern on the ropes going into the ninth inning, 8-2, and they gave up 7 runs in the top of the ninth inning. A little bit of a heated affair, had a couple of bench clearing incidents in that Saturday game, but Southern was able to take 2 of 3 against Texas Southern this weekend. And really what surprised me most about that game in particular, the way Texas Southern kind of kicked the ball around, it really concerned me. I believe they had 5 errors in that Saturday game. So that's things that you just keep in the back of your head with regards to this terminology that we use, fool's gold, in regards to Texas Southern baseball this season. But we get a really good metric this weekend in terms of taking a look at Texas Southern and Prairie View. And Doc, before I go any further, we talked a little bit about the weather this weekend. And I wanted to send shouts out and prayers to the good people of Rolling Fork, Mississippi. That storm system that came through this weekend really wiped out a lot of destruction in Rolling Fork. You had multiple deaths there. So prayers go to those people in the Delta region of Mississippi, which is, of course, within the footprint of Mississippi Valley State.
And while we're at it, let's not forget about those who were victim of the school shooting in Nashville yesterday. We're gonna send prayers and shout outs. So let's all include them, as it makes no sense that you send your child, grandchild, niece, nephew, whatever to school, and you hope that they come home. That is not where I hope that my child would come home from school. Supposed to go to school to get educated, not get shot at.
Appropriately said by both of you all. Prayers to the victims of one, a man-made tragedy, and the other, weather tragedy. But some people may say that's man-made too, in terms of how we're dealing with the energy and ozone crisis. With that being said, let's turn and get back to it. I'm gonna go back to you, Charles. Give me your thoughts in terms of what took place this weekend with some of these scores on the Western Division. Obviously, you got your eyes on some of the game you got to see up close in terms of with Texas Southern and Southern. You have to give some credit to Southern as they, played for championship last year, got the Western Division coming from behind. They don't lay down easy. They had that rivalry game the weekend on the road. They lost 2 out of 3. But they come back on another tough road weekend and being down and just keep fighting. And they find a way to get 3. So great point you're making there. What are your thoughts on some of these matchups that took place? Some brooms came out and then some good tough series as well.
Yeah, well, in regards, Prairie View did what they were supposed to do in terms of the first 2 series of the season that they've had. So there, I look for them to be 6-0 at this point in the season. I can't say enough about the Southern baseball team. Like I said, slow start. But this past weekend was a weekend for them to put things together, and their bats came out. And that was very impressive to watch them fight and claw back. You're down 8-2 in the ninth inning. You think the game was pretty much salted away, and the way they came back with 7 runs in the ninth inning, it totally changed the whole magnitude, I think, of the series, and they were able to take 2 of 3 from Texas Southern this weekend. So that was a big weekend for Southern baseball.
Yeah, you're talking about coming out of the game with some confidence. You lose that game, maybe your confidence is shaking. You're asking a couple of questions. You're down 1-3 in the conference race real quick instead of being 2-2 and feeling like, all right, we keep fighting. We'll be in these matchups, and they find a way to take 2 or 3. That just crazy in so many different ways. Let's get in some of the key matchups, as you said. It's going to be fascinating when you talk about the rivalry games. And so I'm going to start with you, Charles. What is the biggest rivalry game that you have on your – and you can jump maybe 2 of them if you like. You got the FAMU at Bethune-Cookman, Alcorn at Southern, rivalry in terms of between states, actually one of the closer teams to each other when people think about it. Texas series with Prairie View, Texas Southern, Jackson, Mississippi as we head in Mississippi, and then obviously Alabama State and Alabama A&M in Alabama in terms of some of those big rivalries. You even have the rivalry between Louisiana, Arkansas with Grambling and Arkansas Pine Bluff, if you want to look at it that way. But a couple of in-state rivalries, a couple of state-to-state rivalries as well. What is on your radar in week number 3 for the SWAC?
The big one for me is, of course, is Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman. You talk about Bethune-Cookman's pitching going up against Florida A&M's batting. Florida A&M thus far in the season, they're batting .309. And as far as pitching as a staff, Bethune-Cookman's ERA is 5.37. So you take a look at the game within the game, you know, in terms of Bethune-Cookman's arms going up against the FAMU bats. You know, I'm big on defense, so I always like arms going into series like that.
AD, Drew, same question to you. Which rivalry game or two really stands out this weekend? What do you have your eyes on as you follow a little bit of baseball coming into this week number 3 for the SWAC?
Well, I'm going to stay away from the obvious one that Charles already got. I'm going to stay in the East, and I'm going to go off the beaten path. I'm really interested in this Jackson State Valley game. This is a get-right series for Jackson State, as they've gotten off to a poor start with only with a 1-5 record in the East. Jackson State has to sweep this series. They can't come out of here with 2 out of 3. They have to sweep this series because you've got 5 teams in the East vying for 4 slots. On the West side, we already know which 4 are going to be in. It's just a matter of what order will they be in. But in the East, you're going to have a good baseball team that is going to be left out of the tournament. That's why Jackson State has to sweep this series this weekend against Valley.
Oh, great point. I like where you're going with that one. Get right. And that's always one that I look at when I talked about the early part of the season. Is you said Prairie View. Those are games they're supposed to win. But if you're not careful, those are one of those games. You saw some of the close, you know, where you lose a game, you still take 2 out of 3. But that can get to you later in the season. Team doesn't quit playing well. You know, now you put the pressure on Southern to sweep, obviously, Alcorn, which is a tough series just because they're going to get up for each other. You push it, as you saw Grambling swept Pine Bluff. So it's going to be interesting when you talk about some of those matchups. So I like the fact that that is something interesting to look at, not particularly just because that Jackson State shouldn't find a way to get it done with Valley, but can they do what needs to be done and really sweep that instead of just finding a way to maybe take 2 out of 3 and Valley in the back of the head saying, hey, we'd like to maybe get us 2 of them ourselves and see if we can find a way to kind of get rolling. So you're right. That's an intriguing one to kind of keep your eyes on in many different ways, what that looks like. Let's take our last break. We'll come back on the other side and talk about some of our independent programs, give you some updates on what's going on out there. Some teams playing decent baseball, other teams not so much, and we'll tell you what that looks like. Stick with us for our last break. We'll come back on the other side and give you some updates of the independent programs in the NEC as well as the Colonial. Stick with us. Be right back after this last break.
Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cavil.
Since 2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties through its programs Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and Parenting Education Coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and Instagram.com/empowermentJAX.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids' apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
Are you hungry for authentic Caribbean food? Like jerk chicken, oxtail, red snapper, shrimp, tofu, and rasta pasta? Well, find your way over to Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta.
Them belly full, but we hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, open daily from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, we're open till 4 a.m. Come to Mango's and put some spice in your life.
So we've got a good thing going.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta. For more info or directions, call 404-698-3992 or log on to mangoscaribbeanrestaurant.com. For instant coupons, text MANGOS to 313131.
Tell your mama hungry, papa hungry, brother hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, authentic Caribbean cuisines.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna loud, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bill with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Mike is out on assignment, so we have Professor Drew and Professor Bishop as we can go into the independent programs and step outside of the big program with SWAC, with all these baseball East and West. We'll go into our independent programs. As you know, MEAG is no longer playing baseball as 4 teams go into the Northeastern Conference. We'll give you a breakdown. But let's start with North Carolina A&T as they're in the Colonial. Don't look so fast. Your Aggies are tied for 4th with William and Mary in the Colonial sitting at 5-4. They lost their last game, but they did take 2 out of 3 when you look in terms of the series race. That started out, obviously, last Friday as they took on Hofstra and won that first game 9-5. You get into the Saturday matchup, and they win another one on Saturday as they have Hofstra's numbers. They win that one 10-4. Hofstra does bounce back and salvage the fact that they didn't get a sweep as Hofstra defeats A&T 5-3 in terms of the game on Sunday. So let me go with you, Charles, in terms of what some of your thoughts in terms of the matchups there of those games in North Carolina A&T as we're getting a little bit of the feedback there on the backside. We'll see if we can get that out of control there on the backside. If you would, Charles, as we're working on that, in terms of that, if you would, Roy, mute the backside there. We're getting the feedback in terms on your side behind us on the production side, Roy. Charles, if you would, with the Colonial and North Carolina A&T, Aggies were able to take 2 out of 3.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a great weekend for North Carolina A&T. When you take a look at getting 2 out of 3 against Hofstra, they're playing great baseball. The big thing with North Carolina A&T, you take a look at statistically, they have some pretty good pitching up there. So pitching takes you a long way. So we'll see what North Carolina A&T is going to do the rest of the season.
Yeah, I give them some credit coming out of their 5-4. That's a good start. When you series, you got 5 out of 4 of them. So that's pretty good. Let me go to you, AD Drew. What in terms of Aggies on this early part of the season, getting 2 out of 3 from Hofstra and sitting up at 5-4, tied for 4th in the division there. It's pretty good.
Actually, what impressed me, Doc, was they actually competed in a midweek game against the University of North Carolina, losing that game, I believe, only by a score of 6-4. So that's very good against an ACC team in a midweek game. But they take on UNC Wilmington this week. Wilmington comes in 7-2 and tied for 2nd place in the Colonial. So this will be the litmus test for A&T to see if they're going to be competitive or if they're just going to be a mediocre team in the Colonial this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, you're talking about a good way to start. It'll be interesting to see, as things play out in terms of what that looks like. How much of that is kind of like maybe what some of people are thinking about with Prairie View is a function of maybe who they played in terms of where teams stand in the conference. Obviously, so many ways. It looks like College of Charleston, similar to what they did in basketball, is jumping out there. And then you have Elon is starting at 8-1, just to give some folks an indication that A&T is 3 games back, just one weekend series if they can get it done. But I'm fascinating on what that looks like in terms of the matchup. Let's go a little bit to the NEC to see what's going on that side. Give you some updates in regards to those teams playing over there, namely Maryland, Eastern Shore, Norfolk State, to give you some of those teams in terms of what they were able to do this past weekend and see who's staying in the race and trying to find a way to get it done in those matchups. In terms of Friday, you had Coppin State as they were taking on in their matchups there. You have Maryland Eastern Shore, I should say, as they lost to Sacred Heart 7-2. You had Norfolk State. They're still trying to find a way to win, but they lost to Central Connecticut, that is leading in the conference over in Northeastern Conference 8-4. You had Maryland that played 2 on that Friday and lost a close one 7-5 in terms of what that looks like. Wagner defeats Delaware State 5-4, and Connecticut gets it done against Norfolk State 6-0 as they shut them out. So HBCU programs didn't fare very well on their Friday matchup. Some of them playing singles, other ones playing doubles in terms of that to see if they can avoid getting swept. In terms of the weekend, you had Coppin as they lose 14-7 to Fairleigh Dickinson in terms of what took place. And on Sunday, for some of those closing matchups, you still had Fairleigh Dickinson defeating Coppin State 7-4 in terms of the Sunday matchup. The final matchup between Maryland Eastern Shore and Sacred Heart goes to Maryland Eastern Shore, so they salvage and make sure they don't get swept. Wagner gets it done against Delaware State in their first of a doubleheader of the 3, 14-6. They do bounce back and win a high-scoring game, 14-13 over Wagner, as Delaware State gets it done there. Central Connecticut takes it to Norfolk State 20-2 as Coppin State salvages not getting swept by Fairleigh Dickinson, winning their last game of their 3-game series 16-5 in terms of those matchups. So you see a couple of teams that avoided getting swept, but not doing too well in terms of the conference standing. The highest seeded HBCU is 4-5, sitting in the 5th spot, Coppin State. And you have Maryland Eastern Shore sitting near the bottom of the conference at 3-6. Behind them is 2-7 with Delaware State. And then you have Norfolk State that only played 6, but they're 1-5 in terms of what they're getting done in the Northeastern Conference, sitting at the bottom of the conference. Let me stay with you, 80 Drew. Not a lot of hope to think about there, but there's some folks that make sure they get the brooms put out. But what are your thoughts on some of the HBCU programs in their inaugural season over there in the Northeastern Conference, NEC, as they like to call it?
It for Norfolk has been feast or famine. First conference series, swept. Second conference series, they swept their opponent. You know, the last one was a 2 out of 3. This week they have a non-conference matchup against Hartford, so opportunity to work some kinks out in a weekend series before they come back and get back into it in the month of April, where every game in April is every weekend series in April is a conference series. So that's going to be the thing. The key is last year the NEC took 6 teams to their tournament, but they didn't have the BAC 4 teams in there, as they now have 11 teams. So they had 7 at that point last year. Obviously, you don't want to have an odd amount of teams going to your tournament, so it made sense to take 6. This year, How many teams does the NEC take to its tournament? We don't know yet if they're going to remain at 6 or if they're going to expand it to 8. They expanded out to 8, where Coppin is in right now. They're sitting 5. They expanded out to 8. Maryland Eastern Shore squeaks in at the number 8 slot as it currently sits. So what's going to be sad, Dr. Cavil, is unfortunate for a team like Coppin State to make it to the tournament and to get a decent ranking. They're going to have to beat up on their fellow HBCUs and use those as get-right games in order to improve their position the way it's shaping up right now.
Who's the strongest of the lot amongst the HBCUs up there?
Say it again.
Who's the strongest of the lot between the HBCUs, Delaware State, Norfolk State, Maryland Eastern Shore?
Coppin right now.
Yeah, Coppin came out last year wanting to close as they were able to get out of the MEAC, and it looks like they continue, to play some solid baseball. But they sit at 4-5, which is the 5th slot in there. So as Drew said, they look to be the team, and that's why he's saying that they could be the one using the other HBCUs to kind of get right and bolster the conference to make sure they sit in that top 6 if they're only still taking 6, or position themselves to get up higher if they take top 8 teams. Great points. I like that. Let me go to you, Charles. What are your thoughts? I saw your face there. You didn't seem very excited. You kind of seemed concerned about some of those scores I was putting out there. So I'm interested to see what direction you're going.
Well, with regards to I was sitting there thinking about the pitching staffs of yesteryear, if you will, with the MEAC teams and in Norfolk State and Coppin State, and just curious as to the strength of those pitching staffs as they've transitioned over into these other conferences. How are they stacking up? So those were the things that I was thinking about with regards to, I guess I was caught in a moment of, wow, the MEAC baseball disbanding in these different conferences, and how are they still holding up well?
Yeah. Can I throw something on top of that, Doc, quickly?
Sure.
I'm wondering if the 4 MEAC schools are still recruiting as if they were playing in the MEAC, and maybe not recruiting as if they are playing in the NEC. It's probably a different type of recruiting. That we had a similar situation with Florida A&M when we came over to the SWAC. We had to, even though we were closer to a SWAC team by style of play than Bethune was, we still had to recruit to play in that conference because just based on the dynamics of the conference, it's a different style of ball. Same thing when it comes to this baseball. Football, we had to recruit so that we could have kids who could go in the Northeast when it was cold. Not you're in the South, so you have to have pretty much speed in the South of football. Where baseball's same thing, pitching. You get pitching because it's so cold up there. Bats tend to get hot later on in the season. So, like Charles said, you got to have the pitching early. Are we recruiting those type of players that can pitch, and are we funding our teams at the level that the rest of the NEC is? I don't want to go into any further because that'll take up a whole nother show right there, Doc.
No, great thing that you touched on in terms of understanding the conference style of play in regards to one time in the SWAC, for example, in baseball, there was a lot of speed when you brought in Alabama State and now FAMU. The pitching depth has been, and that could be the same thing in regards to that. While you may recruit 13 pitchers for the MEAC in regards to believing that you can get it done going in NEC, you might need 15 arms. So you need to have 2 more arms and think about getting some different style bats, whether you want folks not just to be able to hit for power or somebody that can make contact different sides or even play small ball in regards to when you say the style of play in a league and how do you recruit towards it. So I think that was a great point that you made there and something to think about as we continue to follow this year and the trending and the years to come. With that being said, let's close out and get out of here. Thank you for listening inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, from inside the lab and the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Again, I want to thank you for listening for Dr. Ville's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Every Tuesday, prepare for us on Thursday at 6 o'clock p.m. Central. I want to thank AD Drew for jumping in here with us and giving us some context and some framework of what we all are seeing for the baseball season, and even teasing out a little bit of softball as we give you some updates as that continues to get along. Check out your Division II and NIA programs as you have more NIA programs playing baseball as well. Some of them are struggling a little bit, but look for them to pick it up as they continue to move forward. Stick with us as we discuss the latest news in the lab. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That's DRKENYATTACAVIL. That's DRKENYATTACAVIL. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Twitter. That's Facebook and YouTube on Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Dream big. Continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Charles.
Horse.
Drew.
Lecture.
Dismiss.
Mahalo.